a prediction that in a few years, one of the primary uses for Bitcoin will be foreign remittances. Here's another market where banks are profiting in the most disgusting way possible. Every year, immigrants working in countries other than their own send home more than $550 billion in a market called foreign remittances. They send home back to their families, and the average immigrant supports more than 12 people back home, usually an entire community. Most of that money goes into the hands of women who use that money to invest in sanitation, healthcare, and education in their local communities. And this is the market that organizations like Western Union have decided is a great place to make profit. And they make profit to the tune of $175 billion a year by charging the poorest people on the planet 10% or more to send money home. It's an absolute shame. And here's the great news. We can fix that with Bitcoin within the next couple of years. We can set up networks that allow immigrants to use Bitcoin, sometimes without even knowing they're using Bitcoin, to convert local currency into Bitcoin, transmit the Bitcoin across borders, and convert it back into a local currency with a total cost less than 1%. That's 1 to 2 orders of magnitude reduction in fees. That's taking $175 billion and giving more than $100 billion back to the people who earned it, who can then spend it in the country they work in, or they can send it home so that their wife can spend it in sanitation, healthcare, and education in the local community. That can change the life of 2 billion people. So remember, remember why we're doing this. This isn't about buying drugs on the Silk Road. This isn't about enabling criminal activity. Because I look around this room and I don't see too many people who are interested in criminal activity. I see people with hope and aspiration, people who are interested in innovation, and people who are interested in bringing fairness back to currency markets. And we have within our power to fundamentally disrupt some of the most entrenched and anti-competitive industries that exist in the world. Banking hasn't seen any competition for the last 50 years, and that's not an accident. People don't start banks out of their garage and then take them mainstream and fight the main banks. Other than PayPal, nobody else has been able to do it. And PayPal very, very quickly got turned into a traditional bank, so they wouldn't disrupt too much. Well, something interesting just happened. Satoshi Nakamoto invented a method where we can apply innovation to financial services without asking for anyone's permission. Innovation without permission is the power that fuels the internet. It is the mechanism by which a kid in their garage can invent the next big app and take it global without asking anybody's permission. And we've done this again and again on the internet. In fact, a lot of us, especially people who are involved with libertarian ideals or are constantly fighting for freedom and things like that, often feel dejected and despairing and disappointed and disillusioned. After all, the internet is really one giant surveillance machine and it's been captured by the man. And yet there are moments of optimism in that, and one of the greatest moments of optimism for me is that right in the middle of a completely captured, corporatized Apple, iTunes / Google / NSA internet, it gave birth to Bitcoin, a black swan of innovation that no one expected, and that will completely blow away several incumbent institutions and organizations, and there's absolutely nothing they can do to stop it, because the power is in your hands. So when you despair, remember that the internet is still able to deliver massive surprise in the form of things like Bitcoin, and who knows what the next one will be, but I know that I'll be able to buy it for Bitcoin. And one of the most amazing things that's happening now is that Bitcoin has become the de facto currency of the internet. You see, one of the things about the internet that was always difficult since the very beginning was that while you could deliver incredible innovation, and while you could transport content and ideas and services across borders, when it came time to getting paid for that, things would slow down and everything became difficult. So I can be a brilliant entrepreneur in Bangalore, India, and I can invent the latest thing, and if I want to sell it, I have to get in bed with Visa or PayPal, and they're going to take away at least 3% of my money, and then they might freeze my account, and I'm only going to be able to sell it in 19 select countries around the world, and while my content can reach everywhere, the payments can't come back. Well, guess what? Now they can. Money on the internet is an incredibly potent combination. By turning money into a content type, we've made money instantaneously global, instantaneously secure, and now we're going to use that to fuel the internet all over again. We now have, with this new technology, the ability to fuel mesh networks, to fuel infrastructure development, to fuel content creators who can now use micropayments to get paid for the content that they create. We can fuel new applications. We can fuel the entrepreneurs of the future who can now do global IPOs, who can now source funds and loans on the internet directly from other people anywhere in the world using Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't something that just emerged from the internet. Bitcoin is going to turn around and now fuel the internet all over again. I often get asked, which country is going to adopt Bitcoin first? And I find that an amusing question because it makes certain assumptions about borders and sovereignty and nation states, which is so 18th century. The most populous place on the earth is not China. The largest economy in the world is not the United States. The most populous place on the earth is the internet. And the largest economy in the world is the internet. And the internet now has a currency. Thank you. All right. When will Bitcoin reach 10,000? What is this symbol here? Is that the S word? My prediction for Bitcoin is that when Bitcoin achieves mainstream status, the value of Bitcoin will be exactly 1 Bitcoin, or 100 million Satoshis. The simple truth is that asking that question assumes that the vast majority of the economy that we care about is outside of Bitcoin. And I think the success for Bitcoin means that that is no longer the case. To ask the question, how much value in US dollars does Bitcoin have, assumes that the frame of reference is the US dollar, assumes that we want to convert US dollars to Bitcoin, assumes that we care about the economic activity that happens in that economy. That is the same as asking in 1994, how many fax machines will the internet replace? How many long-distance phone calls will it replace? What is the value of the internet if it dominates the long-distance phone call market? And that question makes no fucking sense. But that is exactly the question people were asking in the mid-90s, because to them, that was the paradigm, that was the context. Communications meant that. And to create a new communications medium meant simply replacing the old medium with the new medium, like for like, in a one-to-one translation. You must realize that what we're doing here is not creating a better Visa system so we can go shopping and expend fewer calories when we swipe our cards. That is not the point. And Bitcoin will not be the replacement of e-commerce transactions on Amazon.com with the same e-commerce transactions on Amazon.com in order to buy more plastic Chinese junk. That's not the point here. Bitcoin is not about shopping in the first world. It's about everything else, everywhere else. Bitcoin succeeds when a farmer in Kenya can raise money and buy a loan, get a loan to buy seeds from 10,000 lenders all around the world that he has never met through a peer-to-peer lending system. That value was never in dollars. That value didn't exist until Bitcoin comes along and makes it possible for this thing to happen. Bitcoin is all about the things that are not possible with today's money. And that is an enormous economy, far bigger than the existing global economy, because the existing global economy leaves 5 to 6 billion people out of the picture. And so if you imagine Bitcoin as bringing a global transnational currency that is available to all of the people who are today underbanked and unbanked, and people tell me that's a crazy idea because it's never going to happen, because we don't have the infrastructure, because it will take an enormous investment in infrastructure to happen. We know that's not true, because we've already seen this happen with cell phones. Sub-Saharan Africa never got landlines. They just skipped that entire level of technology in a system called leapfrogging, and they jumped directly to cell phones. There are places on the Amazon River where the nearest bank branch is 100 miles downstream by canoe. Those people are not going to get banking because JP Morgan Chase opens a branch. Ever. But guess what? There's a cell phone tower in that village. And that village has a little solar panel, and that solar panel has a Nokia 1000 text messaging phone connected to it, because it's worth having that, and because it's easier to deploy cell phone tower infrastructure everywhere. And now, that Nokia 1000 is a banking terminal, and a Bloomberg terminal, and a Western Union terminal, and a loan origination terminal, and an IPO terminal, and a stock market, and a currency exchange, and a commodity market. And you can do all of those things over text messaging with Bitcoin. So I don't think it's insane to think that when people have this enormous need, if we provide the technology at a level of technology that can be adopted around the world, that this is going to happen. And I would urge you to look at where it has happened before. In Kenya in 2001, they introduced a system that allowed people to transmit cell phone minutes to each other. That system is called Mpesa. And that system within a year or so became a currency, an informal currency that people started trading in lieu of money because they didn't have any other form of money. They could afford to buy a cell phone. They could afford to buy a plan with minutes because they needed that to communicate with the rest of the world, because that meant economic opportunity for them. So they invested in those things. And then you can imagine this environment where one day someone goes to a shop and says, well, I need some eggs to feed the kids, but I don't have any money. Can I give you 3 cell phone minutes for some eggs? And the shop owner says, sure, whatever, I can always use some more cell phone minutes. And they give some eggs, and a currency is born, just like that. Well, fast forward 12 years later, M-Pesa represents 40%, 40% of the GDP of Kenya. And that's not GDP that existed before and got converted into M-Pesa. This is brand new economic activity that didn't exist before. They did it. We can do this again with Bitcoin, and we can do it globally. So I don't think it's crazy to think about an economy that is built around Bitcoin that is far bigger than the traditional economy, because we can do this on the internet and with text messaging phones now.